All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the world's most critical regions, where a partnership that has lasted for decades is, well, getting pulled in two completely different directions at the exact same time. So, this is the question that really gets to the heart of it all. Believe it or not, we're going to see how one small, dusty outpost in the middle of the Syrian desert, a place you've probably never even heard of, has become the perfect symbol for this huge, really complicated shift in the relationship between the United States and its allies in the Middle East. To really get this bigger story, we've got to start small. We need to zoom right in on this one incredibly strategic spot, the Al Tanf Garrison, or ATG. Picture this. It's plopped down in this desolate but absolutely critical corner of Syria, right where the borders of Iraq and Jordan all meet.
You know, the history of this base is just fascinating. It kicked off in 2016 as a pretty straightforward temporary outpost. The mission was clear: fight ISIS. But it didn't stay that simple for long. Over the next decade, its whole purpose just morphed and expanded. It ended up being a launch pad for major offensives before, all of a sudden, a complete withdrawal. This timeline, it's basically the entire U.S. journey in the region, just in miniature.
This is where it gets really telling. When you look at how officials described the mission, well, it says everything. Back in 2018, General Votel was totally clear. The public mission, the one on the books, was all about defeating ISIS. But he also admitted what everybody already knew was going on. The location of that base made it a perfect roadblock against Iranian influence. That indirect effect he mentioned, yeah, that was pretty much an open secret, and it became a huge part of its strategic value. And that kind of dual purpose leads us straight into the big paradox of the American military presence over there. Is it a protective shield for its friends? Or does the fact that it's even there act as a trigger, actually sparking more conflict than it stops?
Let's break this down because it's a classic two sides of the same coin situation. On one side, you have the security shield. These bases are where local partners like the Syrian Free Army get trained and equipped. They fight terror groups, and they're supposed to scare off bigger regional rivals. But on the other side, they are an escalation trigger. They become these big, juicy targets for attacks. They get slammed with international criticism as an illegal occupation, and there's always this constant risk of dragging the U.S. and its allies into a much, much bigger fight.
And look, this trigger thing isn't just a theory. It was the reality, day in and day out. This list, it just shows how Al Tanf and the whole area around it became a total magnet for attacks. We're talking everything from commandos and car bombs to really sophisticated drones. And these attacks had real, sometimes tragic, consequences for American soldiers. So to really get what's happening, we have to zoom out. We have to pull the camera way, way back. Because Al Tanf, as important as it was, is just one little piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. We've got to look at the whole picture of the U.S. and the Middle East. And this is where we really get into the great power game. It's like a giant chessboard where military alliances and global economics are all tangled up in these really fascinating and often contradictory ways. Just to give you a sense of scale, right? Al Tanf might have had a few hundred soldiers, but the total American commitment in the region is enormous. I mean, just look at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. It's the biggest American base in the entire Middle East. It's a huge, sprawling facility with around 10,000 U.S. troops. This is not a small footprint. It is a massive, long-term investment.
Okay, and here is where the story takes a really surprising twist. At the very same time that these bases, like Al Tanf, are proving to be so risky and are getting hit, the official, on-paper security alliances between the U.S. and the Gulf states are actually getting deeper. They're getting stronger.
I mean, a perfect example of this is the big 2025 Strategic Defense Agreement with Saudi Arabia. Now, this wasn't just some small tweak. This was a huge deal. It officially made Saudi Arabia a major non-NATO ally, which is a pretty significant status that basically locks in a long-term defense partnership. So the military handshake, on paper at least, is firmer than it's ever been. But, and this is a really big but, while that military handshake is getting tighter, there's a completely different story unfolding in the world of finance. And if you follow the money, you see a trend that is moving in the exact opposite direction. So this brings us to this big, important concept, de-dollarization. Now, this isn't about ditching the dollar tomorrow. It's more subtle than that. Think of it like this. You probably wouldn't put your entire life savings into one single stock, would you? Of course not. You diversify. Well, that's what countries are starting to do. They're looking to reduce their dependence on any single currency, especially for really important stuff like selling oil, to protect themselves from another country's economic policies. So here's the bottom line. For decades, there was this simple, unwritten deal, often called oil for security. But that deal is now being seriously questioned. When Gulf countries saw the US and its allies hit Russia with these incredible sanctions, freezing their reserves, putting a cap on their oil prices, they saw a really scary precedent. The quiet question being asked in capitals across the Gulf was, hey, if they can do that to Russia, could they one day do that to us? But wanting to move away from the dollar and actually being able to do it are two totally different things. The challenge is huge, and you can see it right here in the data. The US dollar is still just overwhelmingly dominant in global trade. I mean, China's been pushing for countries to use its currency, the yuan, but it's still just a tiny slice of the pie. The whole system, the entire global economy, is just built on the dollar. So what does all this mean? Well, when you put everything together, you get this really complex picture of an alliance that is seriously in flux. You've got these two powerful, opposing trends pulling against each other at the exact same time. It's a true paradox. Let's just walk through it. Step 1. The US provides the security shield. Step 2. That shield also attracts trouble, acting as a trigger. Step 3. So what do the allies do? To protect themselves, they pull the US even closer by signing stronger defense deals. But then, step 4, to protect themselves from potential US economic power, those exact same allies start to push away from its financial grip. They are pulling closer and pushing away all at once. It's fascinating. And that brings us right back to where we started, that little desert base, Al-Tanf. Its withdrawal is the perfect symbol for this whole complicated mess. It shows a desire to lower the on-the-ground risk, but it's happening even as the bigger alliances are getting stronger. So it leaves us with this massive question for the future. Is that 50-year-old deal that basically defined the modern Middle East actually over? Or are we just watching the start of a long, complicated, and very messy renegotiation?